All right, we're here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, clowns and clown selves, welcome to Unintimidated, the Tim Ellis Show. I brought the suit back because I was feeling like it. I'm still keeping the jersey on. I have a game today. Super stoked. But, anyways, before then, I figured I'd do a video on Biden and his new student debt stuff and what that all entails, what that looks like. So, I did a bunch of research so you guys don't have to. And yeah, I'm kind of excited. So let's get into it. Um, Unintimidated Tim Ellis Show. I got through all that. I assume I'm Tim Ellis, same as always. But anyways, basically the White House recently released this thing that Biden signed on forgiving student debt, and the general guideline is that it's like $10,000 worth of student debt. That's not really exactly what it is, but that's kind of like the general idea. But anyways, so let's see. Facts. The Department of Education will provide up to 20K in student debt cancellation to Pell Grant recipients. So that's basically once you fill out the FAFSA, if you qualify for it, it's called a Pell Grant. That's what that is. And Pell Grant recipients with loans held by the Department of Education, and up to 10K in debt cancellation for people who haven't received Pell Grants. So yeah, the only thing like that makes it so that you're not qualified is if your individual income is less than 125,000, as long as your income's less than 125, and if you're married, it's less than 250. And I don't know about you, but 250, that's a lot. Like that's like dentist money right there. At least for Michigan, to my understanding. So basically, they're trying to just make it so the interest is less as well, which I guess I agree with. I don't know yet. Borrowers that have worked for a nonprofit in the military or federal, state, tribal, local government, you get credit towards your loan forgiveness, which I actually think is kind of a good idea. Um, I don't I don't know exactly what it entails because I'm not very intimately familiar with tax code and how that, um, or sorry, and loan forgiveness stuff because I I don't have loans yet and I haven't had to pay back anything quite yet. So we'll see. Um, it'd be nice if this channel just absolutely blows up and then I don't have to worry about it. But that's unlikely. So someday I will have to figure that all out. But anyhow, what else do we got going on? Yeah, so it's basically, and then they brag about 175,000 public servants have already had more than 10 billion in loan forgiveness approved, which is, I guess, cool for them. And then also, he's trying to double the maximum Pell Grant and make community college free, which I don't like personally. So yeah, I reading through all of this reminded me of a line from Alexis de Tocqueville in his memoir on pauperism. So I'm gonna actually read that off for you guys, um, just because it isn't directly associated, but it's kind of with all this debt forgiveness. It kind of brings this line to mind. So, in his memoir on pauperism, he says, "What can be expected from a man whose position cannot improve, since he has lost the respect of his fellow men, which is the precondition of all progress, whose lot could not become worse, since, being reduced to the satisfaction of his most pressing needs, he is assured that they will always be satisfied? What course of action is left to the conscience or to human activity in a being so limited who lives without hope and without fear? He looks at the future as an animal does, absorbed in his present and ignoble and transient pleasure that it affords. His brutalized nature is unaware of the determinants of its destiny." So that's from the memoir on pauperism. And basically, it what he's reaching out to is that once the government starts like funding these aid programs, that people come to believe that these programs are just due to them, that they're owed this aid and assistance, and they kind of count it as just what they're owed. That's what the government owes to them and should be giving to them. And they have no thought of improving their fortunes, right? Because, you can look at it over the pandemic too. How many people took unemployment because they could live off of that unemployment check? and just didn't have to worry about making their own money because they got that specific check in the mail every however often, and they could just live off of that. They reduced their standard of living to basically animal, and then you don't have to work anymore. It's kind of, they saw it as a win because that was just a constant. It just came in and it came in, and they have no reason to go work, which was great for me because I was able to get a fair amount of jobs over the summer for decent wages because nobody else will show up. It's great. And it's also a tragedy because there's so many jobs out there. Like, I had over the summer, I had 3 jobs at one time, for which I was being taxed for all 3 of them. It wasn't like they were under the table or anything like that. And they were just jobs that, like, I called somebody and I was like, "Hey, I'm interested. I saw you had a sign out front." I didn't have to send them my resume. I didn't have to do any of that. And they were like, "Yeah, when can you start?" Because people need people to work, and it's just a tragedy, honestly. It'd be great if people had a little more motivation. And part of that problem is this whole tax, all like cutting student debt. So now you don't owe anything for the $10,000 that you just cashed in on, right? So it's just, I don't know. I don't like that at all. But when you look at the student debt forgiveness, it sounds really good when you first just think of it, right? But then you also have to consider, where is this money coming from, right? Because with the government, yeah, they have the ability to just print money like crazy, which is what they did. And you know what that leads to? Inflation. Because if there are only 100, you know, to make the example simple, there's $100 bills in the world, right? So each of these dollar bills is worth 1/100th of the whole, correct? Right? So that amount is pretty constant and it's pretty valuable because it's only 1/100th. That's fairly significant for sure. But then we went and we added, like, this isn't to scale, but say we added 20 more, right? So instead of my dollar bill being worth 1/100th, it's now 1/120th, right? And then, something else came up. We need to just cover for the expenses for this month. Print off 80 more. Now we're at $200 in the entire world. And now my bill, which was worth 1/100th pre-printing, is now just halved. It's worth half of what it used to be worth, just like that, right? So the government can't indefinitely print money. That's retarded. It really is. Why would you ever do that? Like, I understand there's something to be said for, like, oh, dollar bills get destroyed, so you need to replace that. But it's not at the rate that they've been replacing them, right? And then you also look at the government, when they print this money, the prices of everything around the government is presumed to be pre-printed, right? So basically, if you only have 100, and then all of a sudden, so if there's only $100 bills, right? But then all of a sudden, bang, I print 100 more. But before everybody else gets a hold of those 100 more, I currently have 100 that are worth what the previous 100 is worth because my 100 isn't in circulation yet. So I'm able to spend those 100 to buy as much as I want. And then the instant that all of my 100 hit the market, there's now 200. So now it's worth less for the person I paid. Say I have an employee and I pay him $1 per week, right? For the scale, right? So he's receiving what he believes to be 1/100th of the entire value, which is a ridiculous amount. But for the simplicity of it, right? But it's not really 1/100th of the value, is it? It's 1/200th. He just doesn't realize that yet, right? Until all those 200 are filtered into the system, and now there's an excess because previously the system operated just fine on 100, but now I've doubled that. So in order to buy the resources to make something that I would sell for $1, I need to pay a little bit more, and then I have to charge a little bit more, and then that just raises the price because it's no longer worth 1/100th of the entire value. It's worth 1/200th of the entire value, right? So the government can't just keep printing because that ends very, very poorly. It works well for the government because their dollar is worth 1/100th, even though there's 200, right? But so there's that. Or what else can they do? Oh, they can raise taxes, right? Because that's another way to just crowdfund money. But how does that help, right? So, say my dad, he didn't go to college, right? And he's worked his entire life. He's doing absolutely fine. He was able to raise 8 kids, right? Wonderful for him. He's been such a blessing. But he has no student debt. Like he went to college for a little bit, didn't get a degree, but like anything he owed in classes was just gone by the time he graduated. Like it's not that hard, right? He's been out of college for I don't even know how many years, right? So he has no debt whatsoever left over from college. But on the other hand, a lawyer who went to college for 4 years for pre law and then however many years for their actual law degree. I don't know the precise number. I know here at Ave Maria, we have a 3+3 program. So basically, you go to college for 3 years and then you transfer into the law program for another three. And then I believe that's a lawyer. I haven't really looked into it. But so you have that, right? So you've spent at least 6 years in college, perhaps more. And there is very, very little chance that you graduate after 6 years of college with zero debt. That's a very difficult thing to do. And honestly, if you did it, incredible kudos to you or your dad with oil money. I have no idea. But so that's impressive. That really is. But odds are you're going to have student debt. And though when you graduate, you're a lawyer. You should have relatively significant income. I mean, there is the off chance that you don't, but you should have known that before going in, right? The the degree I came here to college for was I originally started as a psychology major and a minor in I don't even remember what. But as a psychology major, I was looking around for like different degrees or different jobs I could get with my degree in thoughts of like, oh, after I graduate, I'm going to have this piece of paper that says I'm a psychology major. I spent 4 years, earned all the credits, did all the time, and I should be good to go, right? And I have a little bit of debt, but if I get a decent enough job, I should be fine. And you can't get anything with a psychology major, right? You just can't. And it's very difficult. And if you want to actually get something that pays decently, you have to go and spend another however many years in graduate school, accruing a ton of debt because graduate school isn't cheap. They're expecting that when you come in, you're going to leave there with a very good degree that makes a lot of money. So they can upcharge you quite a bit because if I have, $100,000 in student debt, but I'm working a job that I'm making 200,000, it's not that difficult to over a period of 5, 6, 7 years pay back incrementally that 100,000, right? So if you go to college and you're not expecting to be able to make more than you're going to accrue in debt, that's not smart. You should have looked at that in the beginning. And if you're not doing your homework on that, that's honestly on you. It's not that difficult. You can look on Glassdoor, you can look on wherever, and you can just be like, all right, my degree is going to get me this. So pretend I'm one of these right now. All right, clinical psychologist, what do I make? And it's like, oh, I'm going to be making between 85 and 125 grand by the time I'm said and done. So if I'm going to have 100,000 in debt, is that really worth my time? Right? You're going to spend so much. And honestly, if you get out with 100,000 in debt, you're pretty lucky. Like that's a relatively small amount, I think. Like just looking at the different graduate schools I searched through before deciding to not do that major, they're expensive. They really are. It's like 50K a year. And that's not working over the summer money. Like working over the summer money is like, oh, it's 8,000, whatever. I can do that. 8,000, 10,000. That's about summer money. That's a hard summer. That really is. But it's possible. I've done it. It's not fun at all. But that's what college is. It's just like you're here to grind. You're not here to have like frat parties like crazy and do whatever. And so at the end of 4 years, you leave and magically get a job working for somebody. Like you actually have to work, you have to study. And if you're going to go to college and your expectation is to not do that, I'm sorry, that's on you. And all of this debt forgiveness is just making it so that people who went to college for really stupid, like competitive dance, theater, history major, like, yeah, that might be fascinating. I can't dance personally, so I would never do that. But like, if you love dance, if you grew up doing that and that's the major you want to get, go for it. I don't personally know what college that offers it, but I'm sure there's something. And like, you just got to be realistic about it. And you just need to realize that, like, oh, college is whatever, plus with my scholarships, whatever it might turn out to be significantly less because you're a dancer, you're probably on the dance team, whatever. So it's probably looking at like, maybe 12,000, maybe, let's give the conservative estimate of about, oh, I pay 12,000 a year. So that's 2 semesters, 6,000 per semester. So I'm 12,000 a year over 4 years. You're like, oh, okay, that's going to be 48,000 that I need to make over college, right? If you look at it and you're like, okay, I can make 8,000 over the summer, over, you know, 4 summers, plus I had some saved away. That's not really that bad of a number. But you have to be considering that. And you also need to consider like, oh, once I get out, I'll start my own dance studio and I will make not very much. So you need, people have passions and people run with passions and it works really well for them, right? But you also need to be a little bit realistic and you can't expect just because you're being a little ditzy when you got into college and you picked a really useless major, you can't expect that to fall onto people who didn't go to college because they knew that they weren't going to be able to they didn't want to take on that debt and they did the smart thing and now they're living their lives just fine and they're doing really well at it. You can't expect them to take a tax increase because you were an idiot, right? You need to just it doesn't work like that. You can't be an idiot and expect people to make up for your mistakes all the time. This isn't like daddy trust fund baby thing. Like, just be realistic. And so, yeah. And to make it even worse, we have Bernie Sanders chiming in. Um, yeah. So, in an interview with, I believe it's ABC. Yeah, ABC this week, anchor George Stephanopoulos. George Stephanopoulos. That's a heck of a name. But anyways, he Bernie Sanders was like, I don't, he was on had an interview on ABC, and he said that, and I quote, "I don't hear any of these Republicans squawking when we give massive tax breaks to billionaires." Um, so there is given most conservative people just blow that off and be like, oh, the top 1% pay 40% of all taxes. The truth of the matter is, top 1% pay 40% of all income tax, which is okay. I get it. And I read an article that was talking about the difference between income and the rest of all the other taxes. And it's like, oh, income's a really progressive tax. It's actually taxing rich people like they deserve to be taxed. Okay, fine. So 1% of 1% pay 40% of all income tax. And then if you break it down into different percentages or into like the different types of tax, it turns out to be that the 1% earn about 21% of the income and they end up paying 24% of all taxes, which to me seems kind of fair. Like, it is what it is. I think if your income should be equivalent to the amount you're taxed, honestly, I would love to see a flat tax, just like flat 5%, 10, I don't know what the fairest percentage is, but just like flat. It is what it is. You can't find some accountant that'll weasel away around for you, which I'm all for. Like, I think if there's a loophole in the system, exploit the heck out of it because it's in the system, right? It's not like you're cheating. It's not like you're lying. It's just you're using the system the way the system is. And I also think it's really funny to watch people get away with like broken amounts of just like, oh, I exploited the system, or not exploited, but just like found this loophole, slipped through it, and good for them. But I personally would just petition for a flat tax, right? Because if you look at, I was talking with one of my previous employers, it was for a filming job, and he was like, honestly, I would love a flat tax because it saves so much. He's like, personally, what I'm paying right now, he gave me a little more of the number, but he was like, it's above if we just had a flat tax. And that's with like, he's doing well. And he has an accountant who's like looking for all these loopholes. And this is the best he can do, right? So he's like, if there was a flat tax, it would actually save me money. Like, I'm 100% on board with that. Let's do that. So it is what it is. I'll post the links to everything that I've been referencing. So I got the White House article, Alexis de Tocqueville's memoir on pauperism, which I highly recommend. Very difficult read, very good read. Um, but he just does a great job of pointing out, like, yeah, when part of what Alexis goes into, I'm gonna backtrack a bit. Sorry, I'm still figuring out this whole order of operations thing. But he part of what he says is he talks about how in some countries just the rich give to the poor and it forms kind of like this bond, right? So the rich have this empathy for the poor and they give to them because of that. And then the poor have this like idea of like, this is not an ideal situation, right? The only reason that I'm able to do what I do right now is because of so and so's generosity. And so they have this thought in their mind of upward mobility and of improving themselves in order to not need that anymore. But now in the situation where we have it, it's people are just receiving money because it's owed to them in their mind. And if you just believe you're owed something, like I said, they have no thoughts of doing anything productive because why would they? Like if you can live like an animal, but you're living, even if it is like an animal, and you work absolutely zero, you sit on a couch all day and you watch TV, and then every once in a while you go out into wherever and have the, you know, I need, need money, wife sick, God bless sign. Like they're content with that. And I understand that there are people who genuinely do need money, but a lot of times it's like it's kind of a scam and it's really unfortunate. But I guess that is what it is. So just that I don't know. Alexis de Tocqueville, the man. Um, I would say he has perhaps one of the best commentaries on America, in democracy in America, merely because he has an outsider's view. I believe he was French with a weird name like that with the QU in it, CQU. He's got to be French. So he's a little snobby, or snotty. I don't know, both maybe. But he has a good outside view, which is something that a lot of times as Americans we kind of look at our country and we're like, oh, it's so sad, it's so unfortunate. Religion's so oppressed. We're so racist here, and like in comparison to other countries, no, like we're doing relatively well, even like on standards of pollution. Like people are constantly like, oh, we got to reduce emissions, make these factories more effective, whatever, whatever. And then like you look at the crap that China does, it's like, you know what? We're actually doing pretty well. Like you have it's in a comparison thing, right? You can't just be like in relation to how we were last year, we're not doing quite as well. You have to look at like the rest of the world and you're like, oh, in the next two countries, they're really, really going heavy on this pollution thing, and then we're just chilling. So it is what it is. Um, one last statement from Bernie Sanders. Why is this guy still around in politics? Like he's just some guys just need to go to the retirement home and entertain the other ladies in retirement home. Just like he could make a great stand-up comedian, just like political commentator, stand-up comedian. Highly recommend that for Bernie Sanders as his future aspirations. um, I would go and watch that show for sure. But anyways, in that interview, from ABC, he also renewed his call for raising minimum wage, providing free healthcare, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, and I think he also said something about making all college free, which is just not a good idea. Because do you imagine how much taxes are going to have to go up to pay for college like that? Because professors don't just work for bread and butter; like they work for actual money, and that's why tuition is kind of what it is. Like I understand there is like a commodity convenience thing to it. It's like, oh, this is Harvard. Like we not anymore, but used to produce very, very astute students, and therefore we can charge more because the quality of education should be higher. So I get that. And that is a little bit of the cost. And I mean a bit of it if you just look at it like vote with your pocketbook. Like I'm at the college I'm at because I could afford it, because I liked the college, because I liked the degree, and I also just liked the location. It's in Florida. It's great. Florida's awesome. And that's part of it, right? So I'm willing to pay what I'm paying because I like the college and I believe in its mission enough to spend what I spend. And that's just how people should go to college, right? You just look at a college and don't go to it because you're like, oh, it's Ivy League and oh, whatever. My friend's going there. Look at it as an investment into your future where you're just like, okay, if I go here, spend X amount of dollars, I will come out with this degree, which perfectly enables me to engage in the outside world in X, Y, and Z ways. I can get a job that will pay me X amount more than had I not gone to college. Or even if you look at it and you're like, I just don't want to do manual labor for the rest of my life. I don't want to be an electrician. I don't want to be a plumber. I don't want to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then if I get a college degree, I can make around the same amount of money, which it honestly is. Like if you're working, I just know electrician because I know a decent amount of electricians. If you're working as an electrician, you can make a perfectly reasonable living off of that because nobody wants to work. So if you're the guy and you'll be like, yeah, I'll show up. And especially if you're doing, I think the money's in commercial right now, but like, so no one can get stuff for residential. And so if you work in residential electrician, it's a rough job. It really is. And it's a little bit dangerous, but I've done a decent amount of it and it's doable. It really is. And everybody needs someone who will just show up, honestly. Show up, have a relatively competitive price. You can charge great prices and just be relatively competitive. And you don't need any college for that, believe it or not. And so yeah, there's that. Uh, I mean, there's a little bit given if you give philosophy and if you're trying to like pursue truth at a higher degree, that education comes in. But by and large, you don't need it. You don't. I'm just doing this because I don't want to be in the trades. I've looked at the trades. I don't want to be in the trades. So that's why I'm going to college. But genuinely, if you don't really, really desire to go to college, you don't have to. It is what it is. So, anyways, I realize I'm now at 27 minutes of talking. Um, so yeah, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, stuff like that. Um, I think that's approximately everything. And I'm about to run out of time because this thing will only record for 30 minutes. But anyhow, God bless. Bye.